Welcome to Connected by Community, brought to you by Ballantine Capital Advisors. We are joined today by Katalyst, a technology company based out of the Carolinas. And our special guest here is Jessie White. Welcome, Jessie.
Thank you so much, both of you, for having me on, and excited about our conversation today.
Great. Well, tell us a little bit about about Katalyst. Sorry.
Sure. So I can't believe it, 17 years old now. And kind of grew up in Western North Carolina, and then have, trickled and spread our wings all around the Carolinas. And so our CEO, for instance, he lives in Wilmington. I'm here in the upstate, but we have, lots of folks, almost 50 now. And what we do primarily is help our customers go further, faster, and safer by designing and assisting them with cybersecurity solutions. If you don't know, October is Cybersecurity Awareness Month, and so there's a lot of activity right now that we're working on with customers to help message that and kind of why it's so important. Yeah. Everybody's tired of being scared about cybersecurity. Yeah. Those days are over, and so what we really try to do is align our customers' outcomes and what they're trying to get to a robust enough program that doesn't prohibit that, but yet enables that. And you guys have all seen that, right? Your bank, your 2FA, right? All the things when I log into your platform, a hair sample, my firstborn, all those kinds of things that I need to provide as a challenge. There's a lot easier ways to do that now. And so that's what we really try to do. We try to make it frictionless so our customers can serve their customers, yet be secure at the same time. And that's really it.
Now, your company's been in business 17 years, but I saw that you were celebrating your 14th year at Katalyst. So congratulations, you came on board really early.
I did. And in our world, in the technology industry, which I know you guys are broadly aware of, I'm a dinosaur, right? Because most people don't stay for 14 years.
Yeah.
I have a lot of goals in my personal life, and two of them are freedom of time and space. And what that means to me is I want to be a part of an organization that allows me to have those things. And so Katalyst has always been very accommodating, and I work really hard and I work a lot. But what they've done has allowed me to realize those two personal values that I have. There's a lot of people unhappy in their job and they're just overwhelmed. I don't feel that way.
Great.
And so I love that. And that's why I've chosen to stay. And again, the mission, we really do provide companies headquartered here, specifically in the Carolinas, a competitive advantage.
Right.
Because you've all heard the stories, right? When you hear about MGM, the casino
Vegas,
getting,
the most recent.
I mean, they probably spend more in cybersecurity than like the GDP of Greenville, Spartanburg, right? I mean, it's you think about it, and nobody is impenetrable, and it's not discriminating, and it's great for business, but it's really bad for the customers that we serve.
So for cybersecurity, let's just define what is that?
Sure. Cybersecurity, in if we were at a backyard barbecue, this is what I'd tell you. I'm going to keep and protect your brand. Right? So the worst thing that could happen to you or any firm is to make front page news that you have been breached. And something that you've taken decades to build can be erased in minutes. That's what's happening.
Yeah.
And believe it or not, you guys know more about fiduciary responsibilities than anybody in your business. But then you've got to arm all your constituents and customers with cyber, security insurance and all of these breach protection sort of programs. And, and when you look at that over scale, the customers that didn't hear about it now get a letter in the mail from you, and then they have to hear about it, right? And so that's kind of one thing that we do is we help protect brands of businesses. We don't do anything in the personal space, so that's a big separation. We're not a LifeLock, we're not a Carbonite, those kinds of things. We're B2B only. So I would say brand protection is a really big one. The second thing that we do is we enable our customers to play offense with their cybersecurity portfolio. Again, the way commercial business is exchanged now is business partners at the beginning of an agreement are asking that potential partner, tell me about your cybersecurity program.
Right.
How safe am I going to be if I do business with you, if I put my crown jewels or customer information inside your warehouse, your system, your whatever, is it protected, right? So that's another big area. And one thing that we do a lot, and it's really funny, is all of our customers, 95%, I'd say, have what's called cyber insurance. And so these are with big firms like a Travelers or a Kroll or an NFP, these big, massive, Lloyd's of London, the massive
right.
orgs that provide cyber insurance policies. And so what's happening is those policies, on average, are going up about 32 to 36% a year.
Wow.
So you take an organization that has a $10,000 a year cost, and now it's 18, 14 over 2 years, whatever that is. That starts to become unpalatable, and then people are dismissing it or shopping to find the new one. But the cyber insurers are tired of paying the ransoms, right?
Yeah.
And so what we're really trying to do, you've heard of the Allstate Safe Drivers Discount program. One of the most strategic things I think that we offer is helping customers fill out that attestation to say, hey, I have all these safeguards, I have all these protections,
Right.
and then having a conversation with a CFO or someone in risk. I mean, again, a small 200-person company, they don't have IT cybersecurity personnel, right? They either farm it out to us exclusively or they rent it, right, like outside counsel. But helping them go through and navigate that, because if you choose, yes, we have two-factor authentication everywhere, and then you have a breach and you didn't have it in this one area, it's going to litigation. And guess who's going to win, Ann? Guess who's going to win? It's not going to be the small business. It's going to be the large cyber provider of insurance. And so we try to keep people safe for those potholes. Are those tangible examples that at least relate to you?
No, that was perfect.
Oh, okay, good.
Yeah.
I just wanted to, we do a lot of nerd, complex things. We have guys that have worked at the NSA, for instance, right, and different firms like that. But the point is when it really comes down to what business leaders care about, it's all about their brand, making them more competitive and keeping them the blind spots. There's a lot of blind spots, just like in the financial world, right? It's the same kind of thing. And believe it or not, the crooks are smarter, they're faster, and they're better than us. And so why I say that is you can never get ahead of them. You just have to kind of meet them where they are. And it's no different than your house, meaning you have an alarm system that you set when you go to bed. Maybe you have a dog, you have a fence, a motion light, right? We have this whole Katalyst house that we talk about. There's protection, detection, and response. And where most customers and clients really, I think, at least in my opinion, don't do that well is in the response side, right? They all have a fence, they all have a motion light, they know how to detect, and they know how to protect. They all have deadbolts on their doors, right? But what actually happens at 2 a.m, when somebody comes through that door and your dog doesn't wake up, or your light doesn't turn on, right? And that's kind of the reality of the situation, and it's just something that I think is unique to us, how we try to make the complex simple and helping businesses stay safe in today's kind of crazy world.
You're a security ninja.
I'm not, but I know a bunch of them that are fortunate enough to work inside our organizations. Yeah.
What would you say, you go into an organization, they already, might have some type of policies. What are their biggest risks right now?
I had an idea that you might ask me that question. And I thought about that answer as I was driving here, and I said, I'm going to answer that just like I would as if I were a personal trainer and I had 10 new clients. Some were maybe mildly overweight, some were looking to reach the pinnacle of their fitness career, some had type 1 diabetes, some had who knows what.
Right.
And so to answer that question, I would be really cavalier in saying that. But what I can say unequivocally is their biggest risk is their people. Because without humans making errors and clicking on things that they shouldn't click on, or configuring things in a way that exploits their organization unknowingly, then they wouldn't have as much risk as they do. So people is by far, whether it's an adversarial persona that's trying to attack them or people inside their organization that just make mistakes, are by far the biggest risk. And if it weren't for people, then we wouldn't be in business, right? And that's what we help a lot with. It's believe it or not. And again, Cybersecurity Month, like if you are not training your employees once a year, twice a year, have them watch the little video. There's an organization called NIST, N-I-S-T. They have this whole playbook for like what you should be training your employees on. Don't click on the FedEx thing after, Black Friday and you're trying to track your package, right? Like just some of those sorts of things that we see bad things happen to great companies because the user does something they shouldn't, and it's just a bad outcome. And again, we're a raindrop in the ocean when it comes to size of organizations, right? We're not an Accenture, we're not a Deloitte, we're not a McKinsey, but even us, like we had 8 active incidents like in the last month, where middle of the night kind of conversations with, we don't know what's going on. We feel like we've been breached. With something bad is happening. Can you help us? And at that point, the other biggest risk is just like that personal trainer or that physician may give you long-term advice, or you may tell me to pay myself first and save 10% of whatever I make or whatever your kind of golden rule is. Organizations still resist today. And I don't know why this is. They resist prevention over a reactive kind of incident. And when they have those things, they just can't come back from them sometimes. And it's really sad to see mom and pop businesses or organizations that have been in existence for decades go out of business because we weren't able to restore their information and they lost everything, or they didn't pay or they paid the ransom and, transferred the ACH, money to wherever, and they didn't unlock their systems. Right. And so those are all big risks. And I think the last thing that I would say is, we do this thing called a tabletop exercise. Well, what does that mean? Well, that means that we would come into your organization and you're the CEO and you're the CFO, and we'd have a glass fishbowl right here on this table. And in that fishbowl, there'd be 25 tear-offs. And those tear-offs would say things like, I just got an email from my director of logistics that said all the computers in the warehouse have this skull on them and a link to pay a ransom. What do you do?
I'm calling you.
See? It's really kind of a softball. But the point is how do you get my number, right? So what would you do? And your first call should be to your cyber insurer. Otherwise, they may void your policy and protection. So that's a tip. Remember, don't ever turn your computers off. Just unplug them from the network if they're not wireless, those sorts of things. There's a lot of forensics that can happen to help protect you. But that's kind of the point. If you don't have a plan on paper, just like when I die, I have a will, I have a distribution of assets, those kinds of things that I spent $1,000 on with my lawyer to make sure that my family was protected. Like businesses better have it, because it's not if, it's when it's going to happen to you. And again, I'm not a scare tactic guy. That's not my message here today. My message is, if I've been around the sun enough times to know that prevention by far is way better than reaction in an event. And it's just, it's something that, again, if that's my stump or my one thing that anybody takes away today, take it seriously. It's okay if you don't do anything with us. You don't even have to call us. Do it with somebody that you trust, and do it with somebody that has a reputation that can help you protect your business.
So it sounds like, one of the number one things, one is contact a professional, right? Don't be blind to, hey, this is never going to happen to me, right? Have that type of mindset when you're running the business. But also working with someone that will train your staff, people, on don't click the link. I think the criminals are getting really good at changing email addresses, where it's coming from, and making it really real.
Sure.
that you're like, oh, this has got to be real, right? I'm going to click it.
Yeah, yeah, and I think again, your weakest link is still the people in your business, and there's just so many reasonable ways. I'm talking like $1 a month, right, to have access to this sort of stuff where your users can watch it. And then you know what? If Anne, then you run what's called a simulated phishing test.
Right.
And if Anne clicks on that link, Anthony, she gets one pass. She has to watch the video again.
Yep.
If she does it in 6 months later, her manager now has to go sit with her while she watches the video again. And there needs to be some sort of remediation. But again, very, very seriously, like an OSHA or ISO or like all these manufacturing organizations that are excellent at what they do, sometimes don't give the attention to making sure their cybersecurity program is trained and again, continues to elevate and understand what that looks like. So, but good point.
What about cell phones? I know you probably don't work on that realm, that mobility side, but is there a way to protect yourself on the mobile side? Because
Sure.
you got your email on your mobile, you have your
Everything.
financial
It's a computer.
banks, and it's a computer. So
It's
how do
like
you-
80% of communication is now, from a mobile device. I think so just to clarify, we do a lot with mobile devices. We really run the software, like we don't sell phones and plans and those kinds of things. But what we do is we enable those phones to be secure and safe. And so this would mean you've heard of Microsoft and some of these big ones, right? You lose your phone, you lose your digital asset, whatever it is. We can blow it away and wipe it so that it's gone, and who cares if somebody gets it because it's nuked, so to speak, right? And your data is not resident on it. And then the other thing is making sure that helping organizations, what I would say, have privileged access, right? And so what does that mean? Well, if Anne has access inside a company to things with privilege, maybe it's payroll information, maybe it's financials, maybe it's your recruiting workforce, and just critical crown jewels to your company, right? You should have a different level of challenge than me, who just sweeps the floors and delivers packages or whatever my role is, right? And so this concept of just-in-time or elevated access is very, very important for businesses, right? Because it's cost prohibitive to put that level of authentication on everybody, right? But the people that do have access to those things, sometimes it's very important to make sure that they have multiple levels of access. And so in the cell phone world or in the mobile world, right, we've all used two-factor authentication. We just did a big blog about is texting good enough and how that can be compromised, and smishing or SMS phishing, right? You've heard of these things. And we're all seasoned with it. But that's the other thing that we see is two-factor. In fact, one of NIST's key pillars, there's 4 for Cybersecurity Awareness Month. One of them is two-factor authentication. We're still talking about this 20 years later, right? Like it's still not deployed everywhere.
Right.
Because what happens is there's something called shadow IT, and this is inside the company, portions or groups are buying software. The marketing team is going to buy this software outside the purview of IT. They just turn it on. They don't care about cybersecurity. It's not that they don't care; they just don't know. And then what happens is they start to interact, and they have critical information that doesn't have two-factor on it, right? Doesn't have a phone challenge or an app or a whatever. And so these things broadly can be free. They can be, again, $1 or $2 a month, right, to protect it. And it still blows me away that organizations don't take that seriously. And I don't know why. I mean, it's just like you guys. I'm sure you have conversations with people that didn't plan their long-term estate, their long-term whatever, right? And I don't know what you guys say. Maybe we could, talk about that, because I sometimes feel like a broken record. But it's important. And again, if you don't do it with me, if you don't do it with Ballantyne, like just do it with somebody and make sure you're not caught in a bad situation. I think that's like the main point that I try to make to people.
Yeah. It's the same thing in our industry.
Is it really?
When you look at the United States as a whole, I think only 34% of adults have a will.
Wow.
So, it's we harp on it.
That's something. Yeah.
Because if something happens, you don't want the state to
do?
make that decision for
Right.
you.
Right. Yeah.
So in cybersecurity can be probably just as bad.
Yeah. Yeah. It is. I mean, I still think, the worst. What do you guys want to hear? Like some horror stories since we're close to Halloween?
Sure, we love stories.
Sometimes people like that.
We're close to Halloween. Here we go.
Well, I think it gets people thinking about it, right?
Yeah, but again,
Makes it real.
Yeah, and I'm out of the scare, tactic. This is one though that just continues to resonate with me because it just goes back to that, preventative component. Mm-hmm. We had an organization one time that reached out to us that ACH'd or transferred $480,000 to an account that they'd never transferred before because the head of accounting got an email from the CEO telling her that this must be done immediately for a business transaction. And to your point earlier, it looked, felt, smelled like the persona was precise. Mm-hmm. And it was actually an email from the CEO because his mail had been compromised. Oh. And so everything looked, and like how often do you challenge your CEO and say, hey, Ann, I'm not going to do this unless you physically walk into my office. Oh, well, who knows?
Yeah.
And so just having, again, the procedure,
right,
the process, the making sure that the steps are followed in those scenarios before you do anything, or you get a request to change the routing from even one of your vendors. Remember,
right,
commercial business, you're extending risk to all these other people you communicate with and do business with, and you may get an email from somebody saying, hey, we need you to move this, and then you pay the $100,000 invoice or whatever it is, and it's just gone. Mm-hmm. It's gone. Unlike your personal account that's protected, these accounts aren't protected, right? And so that money is just gone. And so this organization ended up going out of business.
Wow.
Because they couldn't get their data back. They lost all this money. The FBI engaged, right? All these kinds of things. But like you think, it was like 80 jobs that just went away.
Wow.
That's bad.
And again, that's kind of our mission is like, do we have customers that have been breached? Absolutely, right? Like nobody is perfect. There is no Fort Knox. You can still get in. Again, back to that response and the detection of when things are going on. That's what you have to do. And that's what you have to be, radically transparent with your leadership on. And I think the last thing I'd say on that is, a lot of times, if there's businesses that are 80 people, 100 people, and they've made an investment in an IT leader, sometimes that IT leader doesn't know how to manage that conversation with the leadership team.
Yeah.
Right? It would be like me coming in and talking to you guys about your risk and maybe doing it in a nerdy or really technical way. That's not going to resonate with you. Just like if you give me the pro forma of my, market, whatever analysis. I get these things like in the mail once a quarter from, whoever. They're like 300 pages. I'm like, why are they? I'm not going to read this, right? But like somebody's making your organization do that, right? And so putting all of that language into a way that's easy for the stakeholder. Right. When I say the stakeholder, like the person that's the gal or the guy that's signing that check or that has the family business or whatever it is, making sure that they understand like how critical this is. That's another big area that we help. And sometimes it's just a conversation, right? And just educating or sharing with people like, this is a really important thing. Have you ever thought about it? Because again, it's not about always what you gain in business, right? Which is CEOs are thinking about lots of things like that. It's about what you can lose too, right? And so without some of those safeguards, and again, just framing the conversation differently is sometimes helpful.
Yeah. Sometimes it's the simple things too. I know in finance, if you receive an email from a client requesting money, we can't enact a transfer. We have to have a verbal. So we have to call the client, get a verbal from them to confirm, did you send this email? And it's that simple process and procedure. But you're right. I mean, somebody can.
Yeah.
Oh, I got an email. I know this person really well.
Right.
And start.
Yeah, I just
start
had
the
coffee with
process.
Jesse last week,
Yeah.
or whatever, right?
Yeah,
We talked
exactly.
about this. Well, what if they're, and again, that's the thing, like the dwell times in some of these attacks, meaning the length that the bad guys are in these environments is months.
Oh.
And so they're starting to listen to looking
To
at
the
your
calendar.
calendar,
Yeah.
understanding who you're talking to, lining up. This is not like the Arabian sheik that you get the email from. Please email me. Like we're way past that.
Yeah.
This is like serious research, like behavioral scientist kind of people that are arming the hackers with data and key points about how they should engage. And I mean, it's like a $14 trillion business or whatever.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
I mean, it's outrageous how big it is. And so, again, great for us from the perspective of organizations will never always, will always have a dependency on somebody like us to keep their information safe. And then two, just making sure that we can use platforms like this to help get the word out.
Right.
Like if you're not serious about it, you should be.
What about internationally? So you hear, oh, Russians, Chinese, blah, blah, blah. Are there actually governments that are doing cyber crimes like this?
100%.
Oh, wow.
And the nation states that are adversarial are very, very powerful. Now, again, it's oftentimes like a LLC of the government, right? Or an umbrella company. It's never like, Russia is it's always a funded spinoff of that.
Right.
But what I would say is one of the things that we do quite a bit is we help with what's called geo-blocking. So does Ballantine Capital Advisors need to have electronic commerce and conversations with China or Russia? Probably not, right? You may at some point have an international client that's doing something, but for the most part, like 80% of the conversations that can be prevented are doing things like saying, we are going to put a virtual fence up around your business, and you are not going to talk to those people. And even if they get inside you through email, we are not going to allow you to communicate back to them. And if they try to, we are going to throw that alarm. Again, it's not the fence, it's not the deadbolt, it's why is Anthony's computer trying to talk to this known botnet in Croatia, wherever it is, right? In China, in wherever. And so those are some of the things. But internationally, there's so many different laws. You think of GDPR, you think of all these different things. And we have a lot of international organizations with an international presence. And so, financials in particular, right? There's a lot of hedge funds that we work with in different groups. They're very particular about where their data is and how it is. But the point is do what you can and to protect your business from communicating with there's like a list of 17 organizations that you shouldn't be talking to, period. Like just turn them off. It's almost free. Like some of the things you're buying at Best Buy, if you're a really small business, like has that capability to turn off those states, subscribe to a service. Like all these things usually don't even cost money, right? Because like there's organizations that are trying to make the world safer. And so you can subscribe to those threat feeds to know like, hey, why is Anthony, again, picking on you?
That's okay.
I like that.
That's all right.
You're
He's the COO, so you can pick on him.
Oh, great! Like he's where all the problems come
That's
to.
right.
But the point is making sure that organizations have awareness of who they're communicating to, and every time we go into an organization, there's just seems to be unnecessary communication happening for some reason, and we'll say, "Did you know that you're communicating with Romania? And is that?" Like, do you have a trusted business partner there? What are you doing there?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that. Well, here's when it's happening. Let's go find out who's doing it, right? And then, oh, wow. I mean, most people have, malware in their environment. They don't even know it. And again, it's not always really bad, right? We had a large healthcare organization that somebody had hijacked their entire environment to do crypto mining. And at like midnight, these computers were like getting hot and warm because of the actual CPU usage that they were doing, right? And so that's another big thing, is it's not just trying to take money from people.
Wow.
It's now we're going to take over and rent for free their resources to use that in our, crypto mining operation.
Wow.
And that's a big problem too. And how do you know that that's happening? Well, maybe things start to get slow, and you're like, why is this really taking so long? I usually open this thing and it's boom, and now it's like everything's really slow, but you don't have the telemetry to say, hey, this is bad software that's running on your computer. You don't know, right? And then unless you have the tooling to do it, it's like, how do you find out? Right? You have to wait till it's too late, and everything's kind of come to a crawl, and then like you can't admit patients or whatever you're doing. And it was just one of those scenarios that was, fortunately, we were able to go in and remediate it, but it had went on for months, and they didn't know until they called us.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of crazy.
That is crazy.
There's all different types of areas where the bad guys, they're not always after your systems or the ransom, right? They're sometimes just after the resources, because you have 500 computers that they don't want to pay for, and they can just take over and utilize your resources.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah, they don't think about that. So one of the questions that we have listed here is...
Did you send me these questions?
No.
No.
Oh, okay,
But
good.
Before you get to the signature question,
I had another one.
okay, go ahead.
Katalyst Law of 50. What is that?
The Katalyst Law of 50. So we have really three different things that we see. Number one, 50% of the organizations that we've engaged with have had an incident.
Oh.
50%. We
Wow.
have hundreds of customers. What is an incident? There's all kinds of ways to define it. But that's kind of one of the biggest pillars. 50% of organizations don't have a strategy on how to react to an incident. That's another really, really big problem. And again, I lead the revenue operations at Katalyst, so I'm in sales technically.
Right.
So most times people will discredit 50% of what I say.
Yeah.
It's okay. You don't have to listen to me. You could talk to lots of our smart engineers or anyone in the industry,
Right.
Because these are real statistics. And then the last thing is 50% of alerts are unresponded to.
Oh. Wow.
50% of
The
those
law of
things that are
50, yeah.
happening, right? They just don't know what that looks like.
Yeah.
And the reason they don't is because they're not consuming metadata, gobs and gobs of data, and understanding that. And so that those are really the three things that we talk about when we talk about the rule of 50.
Oh, okay. That's interesting. It's not what I thought you were going to say. So.
Yeah, sure.
So we talked a lot about businesses, and we have a lot of folks that listen in that are
good.
individuals, right? That might not own a business, they might be retired. And what are some things that they should be thinking about? Because they're not just hacking businesses, and I have a lot of examples of folks that are retired that have been hacked and compromised at their bank. What are some of the things that they should be thinking about?
Sure. Yeah, so know that again, I'm not a certified personal cyber protection guy, right? But what I would say is this. They should never, under any circumstance, take a unknown call, even if it looks like it's coming from their bank, and provide information without validating that. This is the things of the safe words, right? We all have safe words on our accounts, and it shouldn't be your dog's name, believe it or not, because they can find that on Facebook too, right?
Yeah.
And so just some of these things, so that's number one. Number two is, unfortunately, social media has taken hostage of the brain power of some people for some reason. And I'm not going to get on my soapbox, but all of these questionnaires that come out, what year did you graduate high school? What was your first car? What's your dog's name? Where did you go to college? What city were you married in? Like, you've seen these things.
Yeah.
The world needs to know. And that demographic of folk that you're talking about, the baby boomer generation, my generation, those sorts of things. Like, don't fill that stuff out. don't do it. All those are is challenge password questions.
Yeah.
And now they know that Ann Thompson went to this school, was born in this year.
Yeah.
This was her first car. This is her dog. Like, they have the 19 questions that they need to know
Yeah.
to validate your identity. Like, stop putting so much needless information out there.
Yeah.
Nobody really cares anyway. And why do you want to make yourself at risk, right? Like, those are just two of the things that I see over and over. And then
You have 5 kids, so how do
I know.
you drill that into
Yeah,
your teenagers and social media and everything else?
Well, my son often reminded me that there was only one other kid on the wrestling team that didn't have a smartphone. And I said, Ann, you tell me when he gets one and we'll talk about it. Right? He had the flip phone all the way. And I was very proud of that as a dad, because I'm like working in this industry, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, these things that are supposed to make us more connected are just driving more isolation, right?
Right,
Like, just
right.
walk around and look at
Yeah.
people. But anyway, I think those are the big things. Stop volunteering information that doesn't need to be out there. Make sure that you're not taking, you hear about like these Social Security scams and these different things. Like, oh, I'm just so sorry for those people, because they didn't know, right?
Yeah.
Because they grew up in a generation where they didn't have to worry about these things,
Right.
and they're being exploited for that. And then the last thing I'd say is, if nothing else, have a trusted friend, advisor, somebody that can help do a little checkup. Right? Like, some of these folks that have been compromised, they haven't changed their password in 10 years. They haven't turned their 2-factor on. And the banks aren't forcing them to do it because,
Right.
again, that's friction. They may lose that $50,000 deposit because they're forcing me to do something that I don't know how to do. And I just want to go to this bank because they don't make me do that. And I'm
Right.
literally calling. Like, so you have to be aware of your consumer. But just make sure, right? Like, short of stuffing all your money under your mattress, which I know is a strategy that some people have, make sure that you're doing something at least semi-annually. Like, you guys have heard of those 5 F's that some people roll through, and faith, family, fitness, finances, friendships, but just even if it's just twice a year, do a little checkup on yourself personally and make sure that you have your passwords stored in a vault. They're free. Now, remember, LastPass, they got breached. They were like the number one in the world.
Yeah.
I had stuff in there, right? So then what do, right? Well, holy cow, like, you got to read the thing and look how to remediate it. But just make sure that even at the personal level, Anthony, you're taking a minute to really go through and change those things, right? And then there's also aggregators. And these are these things like the nerd wallets, right? Where I can front end my investments with Ballantine Capital, my investments with my Truist Bank, my Bank of America, and I just have one challenge to get into that, which is a risk, right? Because now it has access to 17 things, but all those other passwords are randomized, right? And so there's ways to do that and to have this kind of general portfolio, that can look across all your financial assets and randomize those things so you don't have to remember all those passwords, right?
Yeah.
But it's a first class problem, and it's a real problem how people keep up with that. And can I ask you guys a question?
Yeah.
When's the last time you changed your password at your bank?
Every
Probably a
30
year
days.
ago.
See, there you go.
Yeah.
A year ago, 30 days. Maybe they make you every 90 days.
Yeah.
Right? But just make sure you're not caught in that, because there's this thing called the dark web. This is something that we participate a lot in. This is, again, you're going to think I'm a scare guy. I'm not a scare guy. The dark web is this. Jessie White, my LinkedIn had a breach. Jessie White, my information was now downloaded in that breach, and somebody has my email with a password that I use to get into LinkedIn.
Oh, wow.
Well, guess what? Human beings, believe it or not, use and reuse the same password more than 84% of the time. So what do? They try to get them all at 30 days, 90 days, and they change the dog and the one letter of the date, and they just keep doing it, right? And so you should have, again, NIST, Cybersecurity Month, one of their themes, you guys are like setting me up perfect for this, is strong passwords and password management, right? Use phrases, not words. Use a thing you did, right? Your best fit, whatever it is. Mix it up. But the point is make sure that you're rolling those things over and you're not using the same ones everywhere.
Right.
Because if you do, and you're putting your stuff in Facebook about the top 10 challenge, things about your dog and where you went to school and your first car,
Right.
then you're just going to be in trouble. And again, it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So.
Crazy. All right. So we're wrapping this up, and we have
Okay.
kind of like a question we ask all our Connected by Community
great.
podcast interviewees.
Great.
And it's, what makes you tick?
Me personally?
You personally, yes.
Well, there's lots of things that make me tick. First of all, Connected by Community, I think, is a really interesting name. And I'm a curious person. But I just finished this book on what's called the self-determination theory. And the self-determination theory, if you're not familiar with it, is fundamentally this. All humans have three fundamental needs. There's a spiritual need of some sort, right? Wherever you
Right.
find that. There's a need for mastery over something. I want to be the best certified financial planner. Or I want to be the best COO of the wealth management organization. Or I want to be the best revenue leader of a cybersecurity company, whatever it is. And then the last need is something called connectedness or camaraderie.
Right.
What we're doing right now, how we shook hands in the lobby when I came in here and
Right.
haven't seen you in a year, right? But these groups that we are affiliated with and these things, but that is fundamentally, and I am so extroverted, which means my battery is charged from being here today with you guys.
Right.
If you put me in a room or an office by myself, like, you'd see a different Jessie. And I think what really makes me tick is being connected to other people and helping them sometimes just have an ear to listen to. If my wife ever listens to this, she'd think, no, you're always trying to solve my problems before I get it out. But really, and then just understanding how I can help and give back.
Right.
But I really think that's what makes me tick is, again, I'm so extroverted. I love being around people.
Right.
I love understanding where there's opportunities for me to improve and constantly just seeking out. And I'm in these groups of things. I have these little groups of communities that I'm in that are like extended families, for me as well. And that's a big part of who I am. I
Yeah.
love that. I love affirmation, right? I love that sort of thing as well. That's a big thing, like, that makes me tick. I love leading the organization when we're doing really, really well. I don't like it when we have lumps in our business, right? Like, who does?
Yeah.
So that makes me tick. But yeah, does that answer your question?
Yes.
Yeah,
Okay,
totally,
good.
totally.
Good.
I just watched something on Netflix that is like living to 100 and those blue zones.
I saw
Yeah,
that, or I
and-
heard a snippet on the radio.
And
Yeah.
one of the big things they say, besides like food and exercise and stuff like that, is community. And like, if you look at Japan and where all these blue
Yes.
zones are, it's the fact that they're so entwined with not just family but their community and doing stuff. Even at age 100, they're still getting out there and doing different things.
Yeah, and it's so interesting. My dad is going to tick up on 90 here in January.
Wow.
And he still is on the go.
Yeah.
And does his prison ministry for this, or does his, the point is I feel like when people retire, and
Yeah.
I've seen this phenomenon in my personal life multiple times, and they stop contributing towards a thing, towards
Yeah,
a goal, towards a something that makes a difference to them, they start to deteriorate.
Right.
And to the blue zone kind of thing, it's the same concept. But I would just encourage anybody, if they don't have a mentor, if they don't have a group that they're affiliated with, needs to be wholesome and good, right?
Right,
Not
right.
bad, like a cyber ring of security criminals.
Yeah.
But the point is belong to something.
Right.
One of the things we do is like the Cyber Patriot program, where these young people, kids, middle school, seniors, whatever, early college, are participating in learning how to hack and ethical hacking and hackathons, right? But they're not the traditional jocks, right? They're not football players or soccer players or basketball players, and giving everybody a chance to win at something
Yeah.
and make them feel like they're contributing toward the good of their community, I think is really good. And so I'm just thankful that, you guys have a show called Connected by Community.
Yeah.
Right? It's really neat. And I'll have to tip my hat. The eclectic, cast that you've had on your shows. I mean, you guys have had like the whole gamut, right? And I just love that. I think that's, we all have our target demographics that we like to associate with. And the personas that I've seen, at least on your show, has been neat. And I hope I add a little bit of twist to that.
Oh, yeah,
definitely.
Nothing else, yeah.
Definitely. On that note, I am going to thank everybody for joining Connected by Community. We try to connect small businesses, not-for-profits, personal endeavors, to get out there and tell what they do and who they are. Connected by Community is brought to you by Ballantine Capital Advisors, and thank you for joining us.